So I moved a few things around in the slides from after this morning. It's kind of awesome to teach the same content twice in one day because I can immediately go, oh, you know what? That really fits in to the next assignment better. And so I moved a few things around. Before I start the HTML slides, I just wanted to say a few things about this little icon with the globe. These are examples that are out in the wild that are relevant to the class. They all come from, or they all mostly are stored in this spreadsheet. It's a collection of critical web design radical software example works. Some of these are radical, others are not so much. For example, Carnivore is an artistic project that uses software that the CIA published in the world. While this person does not exist is a more contemporary take on, and cultural take on artificial intelligence, machine learning, image generation. So some of them you could say are art, some are more design. And so I've kind of curated a list of these things into the course. So hopefully I will remember to bring them up. I've been slowly, oh my gosh. I didn't make it public. Let me do that. Design themes, yeah. Oh yeah, I totally forgot. Let me fix that right now. Done. Okay, try that again. And I'll click it again, and we'll see what happens. Very good. So I've been trying to, I used to have them in a separate column, and they used to have this little icon, and I'm slowly editing them in the schedule, but I'm doing it, during the class so that they're kind of fresh in my mind. So the one I had for the first day was this simple image that was made in 1997. It's a GIF. It was made by this team, and it shows two computers with this flashing little electrical lightning bolt sign with the text, "This art happens here." It's it's at the internet basically hit the world in 1995. So artists were looking to see how they could start to rethink their artistic practice that was once physical and put it into virtual spaces. And so here they're already thinking about the fact that the art is not here, it's not there, it's somewhere in between. It's somewhere, but it also kind of references the way that meaning happens when you walk and look at an art gallery. The art is not on the wall. The art happens somewhere between the viewer and the wall. Right? Because every person that comes to a work, whether it's design or culture or whatever, is going to bring their own interpretations, their own understandings, their own, if someone is educated in art history, they will know certain things, and if they're not, they will know different things. So the art happens here. And this, the one for today is really great. It's called click, 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 dot, click, and it was done to reveal just how deeply the source code of interfaces you experience might be examining or trying to influence your action. They basically take everything that you can record on a web page and try to gamify it. And you have to click the button to give the page focus, because once the page receives a click, then the browser lets the page start playing sound. And
subject entered website. Let's see. Yes, there we go. Very happy. There, check, it's done. The button has been clicked. And that was fast. An adventure start of subject.
And this achievement shows up after a second. And you can come and you can see all of your achievements on the page. It's quite fun. It's a quite entertaining look at surveillance online, surveillance capitalism, and the way that, that interfaces have access to your information.
Very slow.
And so the people that made this they might call it art, they might call it design, they might call it a cultural work, they might just call it something else, I don't know. But I've kind of roughly categorized things like this as critical web design, something that has been made that is not intended only to persuade people to buy something, right? They've made it to make people think, to make people rethink our relationship to technology. I think that most of these things kind of roughly fall into that language, that category. So yeah, so if I forget to bring up one of these in class, then by all means, dig through them and bring it up in class, and we'll talk about them. There's at least one every week, and so, or every day, and so we'll talk more about these as they emerge. Okay, cool. That said, let's jump into the HTML. Cool. So first, we'll talk about markup languages, and this is a very simple introduction to HTML. So, a markup language. Who's used a markup language here? Everybody, right? Have you? You ever edited a Wikipedia page? No? You ever Markdown? Have you used Markdown or LaTeX? LaTeX is a markup language. So markup languages, generally most of them, they structure data, they format data, and or they define data or text, right? So they're handy for being able to make editing a rich text document by hand, but also because they're very human readable, while a machine is meant to interpret and render the page, or use or parse the page and do something with it, right? So this is Markdown. It's used on Wikipedia. It's used by GitHub README files. You'll see the README file for every project that we do is a Markdown file. And all of them, basically, with Markdown, it takes these, and each of these has an HTML equivalent, and indeed, that's what it does. It just transforms it into its HTML equivalent. So LaTeX is another one. It's designed for technical and scientific documentation, and the tag title identifies the text and tells the computer where and how to render it. So markup languages cannot do math like programming languages. But some of them are very close to a programming language, specifically XML, which is really not usually edited by humans, but you definitely can. So XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's a customizable language. So it doesn't contain any formatting by default. There's no bold, there's nothing like that. But it does define the relationships between all the text. And so as an example here, I have untested code that I think is probably right. And on the left, you can see it says document.getElements by tag name, and it gives you the tag food. So there are 3 food elements, and so presumably the items will be stored with 3 indexes, or 3 indices in an array. And then the next line says console.log items. It gives the array index that it wants, .name. So this should print Belgian waffles. But you could also assign the values in an XML. Almost all programming languages have a way to deal with XML or JSON. So the markup language, the name markup comes from traditional publishing, where when a printer is laying the type for a movable type in press printing, the markups on the side of the printer's notes tell the printer whether something should be bold, how big it should be, typeface, etc. HTML is short for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the text, so hypertext is displayed as a link, and it allows you to click that link to find out more information, right? This is the kind of core functionality of the web, that it is interactable, that everything is linked. So HTML is the markup used to create all the structure and display the content of all the web pages. Some HTML does have formatting, like the H1, which not only changes the size but makes it bold, or the hyperlink, which the default value or the vanilla value shows as blue with an underline, and then if you click it, it's purple with an underline. So HTML does not let you make up custom tags like XML. It has a standard, and it's called the HTML Living Standard. It used to be HTML5, which was the last published version, but now this kind of enormous consortium that involves the W3C and the WhatWG, the world, I forget the full name that they have, but it's basically like the industry and the nonprofit, that is the W3C, got together and they said, let's make a standard, and HTML is so awesome. We've done almost everything we need to do in it. It's not done. We're still going to make some edits if we have to, if something new comes along, but for the most part, we're not going to release new versions. We're just going to say, like, this is the current standard. So when something is standardized, it's really great, because it means, for example, with the P element, the paragraph tag, that you can go and read the documentation, which is going to be super important for this class. So you can read the documentation, and you can, on these types of websites, you can test it. So I can write a new P tag and say, hello, and I can see it in action and make sure it works, and look at other examples and copy and paste them into my own work. I can check the implementation using a website like Can I Use, where we can see that it's green across the board. Or at least on the browsers we've actually heard of. We can validate our code using against the standard using a validator. So here in this case, and this is what we used this morning, because we have to see this website every day. So this will validate the markup, and it will give us warnings if there are misuses, and errors if there are things that will actually cause the browser to render a tag improperly, right? So bad tags, the fact that the head doesn't have a title. I can't believe that. I gotta look that up. Hold on a second here. It looks like it's in there to me. What does that say? Element head is missing a required instance of child element title. I wonder what's going on. I think it somehow this Facebook business right here, the fact that they put a script before, oh my gosh, this is what's breaking it. It's because they put a NoScript tag before they put all the other metadata of the title, and it broke the page. Huh. Anyway, so we will be validating all of our projects starting with assignment 2 or 3, and I use HTML and CSS validation as a way to basically help you, because when you're working on a page and you're a new programmer to HTML and you're making your code and you go, this should work. I've checked Stack Overflow, I've checked the documentation, it's not working. Why isn't this working? And the first thing I'm going to do is say, does it validate? Because the validation will check to see if you've got a basic syntax error. If you've closed a tag before or after its parent tag, right? So so validation, super important. And then you can check the spec, the actual living standard spec, which I don't advise because it's an enormous page and it's just full of geeky stuff. But if you wanted to, you could. Okay, any questions so far? Excellent. Okay, so next the hands-on portion starts. Let's fork our Hello World repository. So this is slide 13 of the presentation link from our schedule, and you can click this and open it. The instructions are all right here. And we are going to, so the first thing you're going to do is for every project where you are using an existing GitHub repo, you'll fork it first. The fork button is up here at the top right. So you click fork, and when you do, you'll see a prompt. I recommend leaving the repository name the same, but if you want, you can add your name to the end of it. But really, since you're the owner, it'll show up here. So I would just leave everything the same. I cannot fork my own project because it already exists. That repository already exists in mine. So I'm not seeing that option. But anyway, click create fork, and then once you do, then you'll basically, it's the same, it's like, you know, when you're on Twitter or Instagram and you repost something, you've like taken somebody else's images and text and kind of made a copy of it, right? It's like the same thing, except that you are, there's a link. You can actually, if I change this, if I change the original repository, you can pull the changes and update from the base repository. So that's cool. So anyway, once you do that, then open with GitHub Desktop, and it's going to ask you where to save it. And I advise that you go and put it inside of your sites/critical web design directory, the one that you made when you did the web development environment. And then you click clone, and it's going to download all those files. And now you've got a local copy of this project that you can push and pull to the remote on GitHub.
So you just put it in like the sites folder?
Yeah, you could put it, if you don't have any other websites, you can just put it right in the sites folder. But the instructions say make a sites folder in your home directory, and then inside of that folder make a critical-web-design folder. So that's where I'm going to put it. That's where I just put it. That's where I put all my work. Yeah, I didn't always require that you put it in certain folder names, but I think emphasizing best practices has had a profoundly positive effect on the quality of the work in this class. So, all right. Any questions so far? So the next thing is to pop it open in Atom, and you can do that with the keystroke. Open in Atom, Command-Shift-A. And by the way, if you're using VS Code, you can change this setting in the preferences of your computer, or whatever text editor you like. All right, so is everybody on this page with me? Okay, cool. So just move this over here for a second and come back here. Okay, so we forked, we opened the project in Atom, and we now we're going to open a file in our web browser. So there are 3 ways or 4 ways really to do this. If you install the open file package from the web developer instructions, then you can, web developer environment instructions, then you can just go to the index.html file and hit Option W. Well, I have not. I haven't followed my own instructions on my instructor computer yet. And I also then don't see that option here either, like here, where the screenshot's from my laptop. However, I can do the other 2 ways. I can reveal in Finder, and then I can drag it into Chrome like this. Or I could do the 4th method, which is, where'd it go? The 4th method, which is just go into Chrome, open a new tab, do File, open File, and then browse to the file that you want and open it. Right? So both of those work. So I've got this open, and you should too. And the next step is that we have a blank page. And so why do we have a blank page? Because there's no text in there. So let's practice the first hello world right here. Just write any text in it. Even though it's an HTML page, you can just write text in it. And Command S for save. Command Tab to do the quick application switching. It's available on Windows too, if that's what you're using. And then on that page, Command R to reload the page. So Command S, Command Tab, Command R. That those three right there. That's the thing you're going to repeat a lot in this class. There are advanced ways to get around that, where you can auto reload if a file saves and so forth. We'll talk about those later. So so this page says hello world. It's just the text. In fact, if I was to view the source, view developer, view source, you can see the view source is just that. There's nothing else in there. So let's fix that. The next step is that we're going to wrap our hello world inside of an HTML element. So we have HTML as the root element, and then it has a head and a body with a title in the head. So go ahead and do this, and I'm going to just walk around and check in, make sure everybody's okay. So everyone's on the same page, and let's talk about the HTML structure. And so an HTML element, as you see there on the top right graphic, includes an opening tag, the content, and a closing tag. That entire thing is the element, and those other pieces are the tags. So every opening tag that you open that has a closing tag needs that closing tag. That's like one of the big rules that will break your code and break your page, and you can even hide content on your page, and your users won't see it. There are some self-closing tags, and you can see them down on the left. A line break, a horizontal rule, an image. Those are all self-closing tags. You don't have to do a closing tag. And you just have to remember those. There aren't that many. Those are the ones I remembered off the top of my head, and honestly, I can't think of another one at the moment, which probably means you don't need it. And in fact, you can go through the HTML spec and you'll find there are hundreds and hundreds of tags. I only use a very small number of those tags. And if I need a tag, I just go look it up. I have more things I need to keep in mind. Right? That's what documentation is for. When you see a closing slash, or the slash on like on that BR tag, on the line break tag with the closing slash, you can do that. That used to be part of an old specification. It doesn't break your code now, but it's not required. So we typed HTML, that's our root element, and then we added a head and a body. The head is for all meta content. You don't see content on the head, except in a few extreme cases. Head content is meta. It's the title of the page, meta tags, links to CSS files. It's stuff your page needs, but it's not the actual visible content. The body is where the page content goes. It's the visible content that'll appear in the browser. So nested elements are those where the opening and closing tags are always contained. So you have to close all tags in the opposite order in which they appear, right? So here, I open a body, and then I have all the tags inside of the body. I never come back to that closing body tag until I've closed all the other tags in there. I close all of my list element tags before I close the unordered list tag that nests those tags, right? So nesting is super important, and if you don't use proper white space to format your text, it makes it really hard to see visibly when you might have a nesting issue. And so here we have 3 blocks of code. Almost all of these are exactly the same. These 2 are exactly the same, except this one has white space. This one has a small error, and I don't have a linter turned on, which will diagnose syntax errors in real time in the code editor. And so this is what I get, right? It's a broken, the page is not appearing right. If I had structured this properly with white space like this, I could visibly, by just scanning the vertical lines in here, to see that there are 4 spaces or a tab between each column, I could see that there was a problem, right? So use proper white space to format you, right? So here's an example that's similar, but the linter is turned on in Atom. So that linter, that thing the package you installed called linter-jshint will install the base linter, and it will tell you, it'll give you these little alarms that just tell you, hey, you've got an error. And this saves a lot of issues, right? Because you know right away that you've got a problem, and you don't have to like find it later on and have to dig through your code and go, what the heck, and try things that don't work. And so use proper white space, format your code so you can see the nesting, and use a linter as well. Cool, any questions so far? All right, so an attribute adds information to modify the behavior of a tag. So if you enclose text with an A or anchor tag, it adds a hyperlink. But it won't go anywhere until you add the href attribute. So here we have the href is the attribute name, and the URL to Google's homepage is the value. And you put that in between 2 quotes. So attribute name equals, and inside quotes, you can put 2 single quotes as well, that's fine, but you just can't mix them. They both have to be doubles, or they both have to be singles. And then that will modify the behavior of that tag when the browser renders it. You can look up the attributes for all HTML tags in the documentation. You can also add you can add more than one attribute. So an A tag can also use the title attribute, which I think is great because when you hover over it, and I don't have a screenshot, but if you hover over it, it'll show you the text before you go there. I use that all the time when I'm on someone else's website. I hover over something and say, like, what does this mystery meat menu do for me? But it also, more importantly, is helpful for vision impaired folks who are using screen readers. So when you hover over something, you hover over what's a link, or you tab to it. When you're tabbing through using a screen reader software, every time it lands, the tab focuses on your anchor tags, and it finds a title tag. It will read that text aloud to someone who's vision impaired. So a URL, I mentioned earlier, looks kind of like this. This has like all the possible things that a URL could have in it. Most of them just have the scheme or protocol, the domain name, the file, and some other things that we'll talk about later in the class. Okay. So the assignment Hello World that we just opened up is right here. It has learning objectives and the preparation, but more importantly, we've already done the setup. And so now we're inside of the code section. And here are the instructions. So you're basically just going to add some information about yourself and summarize some of the activities that you've already done in the class, and then select 3 projects that represent your interests, aspirations, and passions, and place them in here. And then you'll publish this. So once you are satisfied with this, you should use HTML to make your text readable. experiment as much as you like. And there's really no limit. Like if you use CSS on this first assignment, that's great. Go for it. I think experimentation is like the best thing about the web. And so when you're finished, this and all projects need to be published, posted, and placed on Moodle. So what does that mean? So when you publish a repo on GitHub, use what's called GitHub Pages. And so that to do that, we'll go to my view source assignment, which is the next one. You can see the URL is omundi.github.io/ and then the repository name. Now, that URL is the GitHub Pages version of github.com/omundi. Oops. That. So this is the actual repository, and this is the GitHub Pages, right? And so you can publish a website using GitHub, and it's called its environment. So every time you have these environments where you publish it, you can see when it was last deployed, right? And here it is, and you can view the deployment. So to do this, you go to the settings of your repository, click on Pages, and then you select the branch that you want to which branch you want to publish, and then you click Save. And then, not immediately, but within a few minutes, your page will be, your entire project will be deployed as a web page. Okay? And so then this URL, the github.io URL, is the URL that you put in Moodle. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, these instructions, the publishing on github.io, those instructions are covered in the GitHub lecture as well. Cool. Oh, I lost my, sorry, there we go. I lost the instructions, there we go. So yeah, published and posted, and, oh, right. And then, and then there's the deadline. Cool. So, yeah. What do we got left? 2:30. Yeah, so we got half an hour. So you can go ahead and start working on the project. And let me see if there's anything else in the schedule here. No, great. That's super. Cool. I'm going to stop the recording.